In this podcast, Ben Shapiro discusses the ongoing attempts to take down Donald Trump and the broader implications for the political landscape in the United States. He argues that the attacks on Trump are not just about him as a person, but rather about a broader disdain for anyone on the right wing of the political spectrum. Shapiro points out that this sentiment is evident in various institutions in the country, from universities to the media, academia, and the judiciary. Shapiro delves into the annual presidential rankings released by the American Political Science Association, highlighting the bias in favor of Democratic presidents and against Republican presidents. He criticizes the rankings for placing figures like Franklin D. Roosevelt and Barack Obama above historical figures like George Washington and Ronald Reagan. Shapiro argues that this bias against right-wing ideologies has led to a concerted effort to undermine Trump and anyone associated with the Republican Party. Shapiro discusses the vulnerability of Joe Biden in his potential re-election bid against Donald Trump. He references polling data and analysis by Nate Silver, indicating that Biden's approval numbers are poor and his age is a significant concern for voters. Shapiro suggests that many Democrats are starting to realize that Biden may struggle in a rematch against Trump, leading to calls for him to step aside. He also mentions Biden's upcoming State of the Union address as a potential reset moment for his presidency. Shapiro highlights a recent legal judgment against Trump's business, the Trump Organization, in a civil fraud trial. The judge ordered Trump, his sons, and a business associate to pay over $450 million in damages and barred them from applying for bank loans for 3 years. Shapiro criticizes the ruling as politically motivated and aimed at bankrupting Trump and hindering his ability to defend himself in criminal cases. He also mentions a separate judgment in favor of E. Jean Carroll, adding to the financial burden on Trump. The podcast discusses the backlash against the legal judgments against Trump, with some individuals calling for travel boycotts of New York and suggesting truckers avoid shipping goods into the city. Shapiro mentions a viral video by a person named Chicago Ray, who expressed his concerns about the impact of the judgment on businesses and individuals. Despite the blowback, Shapiro emphasizes the need to address the political bias and unfair treatment faced by Trump and his associates in the legal system. Shapiro talks about the Biden administration's pile-up of unfinished environmental rules and regulations. He mentions that Biden's agencies are facing a deadline to finish important regulations to prevent a Republican Congress and White House from erasing them in the future. Shapiro criticizes the administration for trying to enshrine regulations that would outlive Biden and prevent Trump from making changes if he were to become president again. Shapiro discusses the suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. He highlights the signs of foul play and the quick response from Russian authorities, suggesting that Navalny was murdered by the Kremlin. He also mentions Russia's attempts to form alliances with far-left groups in South America and the Middle East, creating an anti-American coalition. Shapiro shares Trump's statement on Navalny's death, where Trump criticizes the state of America and compares it to the situation in Russia. Shapiro disagrees with this comparison, stating that while America has its problems, it is not as bad as Russia. He emphasizes the need to recognize the scale of evil in Russia and the differences between the two countries. Shapiro discusses the alliances forming in the Middle East, with Russia aligning with Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Iran. He mentions President Lula's anti-Semitic comments and support for Hamas, as well as Iran's involvement in arming the Houthis in Yemen. Shapiro highlights the dangerous coalition of Russia, Iran, and terrorist groups in the region, posing a threat to American interests. Shapiro continues by addressing the current state of American foreign policy, particularly in relation to Russia and China. Shapiro emphasizes the need for the United States to assert its interests globally and protect its allies, such as Ukraine, from aggression. He criticizes the Biden administration for its perceived weakness in dealing with international threats, citing the resurgence of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan as evidence of failed policies. Shapiro outlines 4 main camps in American foreign policy: neocons, realpolitik, isolationists, and horseshoe theory. He argues that a strong realpolitik approach, which acknowledges America's strategic interests abroad, is the most practical. However, he notes the growing influence of isolationist and horseshoe theory perspectives, particularly within the Democratic Party, leading to confusion and inconsistency in foreign policy decisions. Moving on to China, Shapiro discusses the escalating tensions in the South China Sea and the implications for U.S.-China relations. He points out China's aggressive military exercises in the region and the strategic importance of controlling the Philippine Sea. Shapiro warns that American indecision and weakness only embolden China's expansionist ambitions, posing a direct threat to U.S. interests in the region. Shapiro then delves into racial issues in America, highlighting a controversial study by Harvard professor Roland Fryer that found no racial bias in police-involved shootings. Despite the findings, Fryer faced backlash from his colleagues and was suspended from Harvard, illustrating the challenges of challenging the establishment on sensitive topics like race. Shapiro criticizes the lack of intellectual diversity in academia and the stifling of dissenting viewpoints, particularly when they challenge prevailing narratives on race. The conversation shifts to Joy Reid's comments on reparations and the legacy of slavery in America. Shapiro critiques Reid's assertion that Black Americans are owed reparations, pointing out the complexities of historical narratives and the need for a more nuanced understanding of America's past. He challenges the idea that modern individuals are responsible for the actions of their ancestors and emphasizes the importance of moving forward with a shared sense of responsibility and unity.